right, welcome back everyone for a very special episode of Last to Know. As today I'm not actually going to be covering those final issues of runs where a series might have been dwindling in sales and the final issues that I usually cover here on Last to Know, because today I'm actually going to be doing next to Last to Know. So I'm going to look back on a couple of the series and final issues that I've already brought up, and also point out that despite the fact that the final issues may be worth a ton of money, those next to last issues also have some value that you might not be aware of. So a couple of interesting books here as well to kind of bookend and kind of tie into some of the series we've already covered on the show. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see those next to last issues to know, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so let's just get right to it with those next to last issues that you should be aware of when you're out there digging and flipping through those back issue boxes, because again, some of these might be worth a few bucks more than you might think. So with that all said, let's get started right here and go back to a series we've already covered, popular nostalgia, Energon universe adjacent. Let's go look at Transformers number 79. As you know, issue 80 is the final issue, worth a good chunk of change, but those few final issues are also pretty valuable, including the next to last issue, issue 79. While maybe not as expensive as the final, these still maintain a solid value that is worth knowing about in case you stumble across them when you're flipping through a box, etc. Because while some may focus in on that final issue, don't sleep on those last few, because some of them, like this one, could still do well, due to the tune of $25 to $45 for the average sale the last 3 months on issue 79. While listings are a little bit more, people seeking $50 to $80, with the high listing out there right now being a CGC 9.8 looking for $550. Yes, there are other 9.8s listed for less, but I wanted to show you the highest ask out there just for context and know what the high end could be if you find one of these books out there when you're digging and flipping through back issue boxes. Now, 9.8s are, pretty expensive, regardless of that $550. I think the other ones are in the $250 to $300 kind of range. But if you can get one, you would join an exclusive group that isn't as exclusive as you might think, because there are already 79.8s for this issue 79. So it is a popular book in and of itself. Apart from issue 80, the final issue, there's 70 copies graded in 9.8 of 79. So again, not a secret book, but something worth knowing if you weren't aware of it already. Now, while we're talking about Transformers, it doesn't hurt to look at G.I. Joe. And yes, we are going to be looking at that next to last issue of the Marvel run, G.I. Joe issue 154. And surprise, if you didn't know, this is also an Amanda Conner cover. You can kind of see it in the art a little bit, but her signature is right there. And this is one of the early works, if not the first Marvel work of Amanda Conner. Not 100% on the being the first, but I know it's early. With that said, this issue 154 does well. Maybe not as well as 155. As you know, that is a pretty pricey book, but still $80 to $185 are recent sales. Those are completed sales. Giving you averages. Again, trying to give you a broad strokes general idea of these prices. There may be lower, there may be higher. I'm just giving you a good range. So with that, the average listings, so that's what's sold. The listings, however, are looking for $200 to $400 right now, but the only ones I could find listed were graded copies. I couldn't find any raw copies of this one out there right now, and those were all 9.2s to 9.6s. So there are a couple of 9.2s, 9.4s, and I think a 9.6, all asking $200 to $400. With the high, actually, there was a high raw out there. I think that was a high raw looking for $300, but they listed it as an error copy because while it was a misprint, because sometimes in the printing process, a page can get folded and doesn't get cut properly, it's really not that big of a draw for most. I mean, it happens. You call it rare if you like, but I don't think a lot of people pay a premium for it. But somebody has one listed, they can list whatever they like. And if you're a collector and you want to go for something like that, go for it. I just don't see a normal premium added to a miscut book because it happens, especially back then. It was not that rare of a thing. I mean, depending on the issue, yada, yada, but the whole idea behind it, it's just cut wrong. Cool. With that said, 9.8s for this book, not quite as high as the Transformers, with only 29 9.8s currently in the census for this Amanda Conner cover on G.I. Joe 154. Now, again, as you notice, those are both titles we've already covered here with the final issues. And that's kind of the idea I wanted to go with this first next to last to know is I want to touch on some of the highlights of books we've talked about, whether it be in the earliest shows, episode 1, or one of the last shows, like episode 6. So here we are at episode 7, taking a look at now Mega Man, which I know we've covered recently. But apart from that final issue 55, this is issue 54. You've got Zero right there. This is still, even though it's the second to last issue, a $20 book on average. So average sales about $20. While this is one of 2 covers as well, both of them kind of priced the same, so there's no real call out here on price on this particular book. But here's the B cover in case you wanted to see it, and average listings for the two, 25 to 50, with the high listing seeking $60 raw. Not bad for a second to last issue, if you ask me. And neither book, I should say, not either or neither, whichever way you want to go with it, has a 9.8 currently. The highest graded copy for the cover A is a 9.0, and there's only one, and there's a 9.2 of the B cover, which also only has one. So no 9.8s as of yet. If you find it, you could have the first. So with that, we're going to stick with those Archie books and those Archie video game adaptations and look at Sonic, because we did that on the other show together. So we're going to keep these two together and look at Sonic 289. While 290 is the big boy final issue, you can still do well if you find this second to last issue, as this is still a $30 to $50 comic if you can find issue 289. And just like the last book, Mega Man, there are 2 covers for this one. So this is the cover A. I'll show you the cover B along with the listing prices, which are seeking $40 for the A, $95 for the B. As you can see, it even says it right there, high flying variant right there on the wing on the cover of this B cover. Meanwhile, the high listings for both, like those are the averages. The high is looking for $55 on the cover A, with the variant seeking $100, which again is not too far off the average, but just still want to give you that high watermark in case you were curious. For this one, there are also no 9.8s. There is a single 9.2 of the cover A and none of the B cover graded. So no copies graded yet. So who knows? Again, if you find a nice clean copy, you could have the first 9.8 of either book. Now, hopefully you're having fun with this, but before we move on, I want to remind any of you out there who need supplies too, use my code RENA10 over at BCW and get yourself 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for your cards, etc. Basically anything to keep your comics and collectibles safe. You can find something over at BCW, and if you got to buy supplies, save money by using my code RENA10 for 10% off your whole order. You really got nothing to lose when you got to buy that stuff anyway. So with that said, let's stick with the nostalgia train for a little bit longer, and we'll take a look at Thundercats. So Thundercats issue 23 is the penultimate issue, the second to last issue, the next to last issue. So this one, while not as pricey as the final issue, issue 24, it can still do well and fetch you about $15 to $25. Something to know in case you're flipping through a back issue and you think it's just a random Thundercats issue, just because not every Thundercats issue is worth a bunch of money. So keep that in mind as well. A lot of them are just dollar books or $5 fodder or whatever. This, $15 to $25. Not too bad. With listing seeking a little bit more, $30 to $50 range, with the high listing looking for $65 on this one. And surprisingly, there are actually 11 9.8s. Surprising to me, at least. I mean, it's the second to last Thundercats issue. I wouldn't think there was a lot of call for grading and seeking 9.8s, but there are 11, if you were curious. Now, with that said, I know I've covered recently the Batman Strike series, which was a follow-up animated series following, Batman the Animated Series in its classic run. They tried to reinvent the look of a bunch of the characters, modernize them at the time, if you will. And that series of comics that adapted the cartoon also ran 50 issues. But issue 49 is also another one you want to be mindful of, because it can do well. We'll see what it can do, because actual sales of the last 3 months, I couldn't actually find one that sold. So I don't know what the market's willing to pay, but I can tell you that the market is asking $40 for this, with a high ask of $45. So Robin here on the cover. It is what it is. Second to last issue, not the easiest thing to find. Asking prices are pretty high, but none selling as of yet, or the last 3 months, I should say. And with that, none as of yet in the glorious 9.8 range. In fact, I don't think there's any graded copies of this book. So, once again, if you find one worth it, maybe you can get lucky and have that first. Sticking over at Warner Brothers, we are going to look at the Warner Brothers and their little sister Dot, Animaniacs. So, Animaniacs, we know, and we covered this recently. Issue 59 was that final of the run. Issue 58 with Hello Nurse is the second to last issue, and it can do all right. Again, not going to make you rich. This is 10 to 15 bucks based off of recent sales, but asking prices could be seeking to fetch a little bit more. So they're looking for 30 to 60 with a high ask of 150 bucks for a newsstand copy of this book. Just putting that out there. Newsstands can still fetch you a premium, especially on oddball things like this. So keep an eye out for those newsies. You can get yourself a few extra dollars related to it. But like our last book, still zero 9.8s. So no 9.8s as of yet for this second to last issue of Animaniacs. So again, if you find one, you might have the first. Sticking with cartoons, sticking with DC, sticking there, we're going with Teen Titans Go. And I know I was surprised issue 55 sold as well as it did, but here we have issue 54, as seen on the Cartoon Network. The second to last issue, this is the Todd Nauck cover, covering the Teen Titans Go squad. Second to last issue, still does all right, about 20 bucks. Average sales the last 3 months, it's about 20 bucks. But asking prices, again, could be fishing for a little bit more, as this particular book is seeking $40 to $100. That's right. Listings are seeking $40 to $100 with a high ask right now of 125 raw. Raw copy looking for 125 bucks for the second to last Teen Titans Go book. Just saying, something worth knowing in case you stumble across this when you're out there digging. Again, like the last books, no 9.8s, but there is a single 9.6 of this book currently. So again, if you find a nice copy, you could be the first. Now, I have another chunk of books to cover, but before we do, I want to remind any of you who haven't tried Whatnot yet to use my link down below. Sign up, get yourselves a free 15 bucks to try out the app. That's $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached, just to try out the app. You see the auctions. There's some buy it now stuff on there. It can be kind of fun. It could be a little addicting. You can find yourself going down rabbit holes, but for 15 bucks, give it a try. See if you like it if you haven't tried it before. But with that all said, let's move on to our final chunk of books, which is kind of a random hodgepodge of comics where I went more nostalgia, more cartoons. This is just kind of be a few of the others that I've covered here on the show. As we did recently, or I don't know how long ago it was, we have talked about the final issue of Lobo, issue 64. Here is the second to last issue, issue 63, which is another one not easy to track down. This will get you about 10 to 40 bucks based off of recent sales, with asking prices actually looking for more like $75 for this particular one, with the high ask being 300 bucks, but that is for a 9.8 copy. Again, not a lot of 9.8 copies for this one, though, as there are actually only 6 currently. So only 6 9.8s for this second to last issue of Lobo with issue 63. Yes, it's the beginning of the 2-part demon storyline to kind of wrap up the series. Hopefully you find both, put them together, but this one still does well even by itself. Maybe not as well as 64, but 63 is still worth grabbing if you stumble across it. Now, with that said, Invincible is another title we've covered. Yes, Invincible, animated show, still rolling on Amazon Prime. We'll get another season soon enough. But here we have the second to last issue, issue 143. Just one cover to worry about here, though. One cover that'll net you 20 to 30 bucks on average, if you could find it. Part 11 of 12, the end of all things. Second to last, next to last. This thing, while getting 20 to 30 bucks on average for sales, asking prices, tiny bit higher, looking for 30 to 40, with the high asking 60 bucks raw. So again, if you can find one, that's not too bad for the second to last issue of Invincible. Again, just pointing it out. With that said, there are a good chunk, not quite as high as our first book, but still 33 9.8s with actually one 9.9. of this book. I just wanted to point that out because we don't have to see 9.9. So it is fun to know there is a 9.9 of this second to last issue of Invincible, just for context. All right, with 2 more books left, you might be wondering, which direction will we go next? Will we be leaving Image? No, we're going to stick with Image, but we're going to go further back with Image, and we're going to look back at The Max, which I believe I covered on the first show of this new Last to Know run. But The Max, issue 35 was that final issue. This is the second to last issue, issue 34 of that run. And yes, it also does well. Not as well as the last, but still $30 on average. Not bad for what seemingly a random issue of Max. I mean, again, it's just issue 34, $1.95 way back in the day. $30 is what it has sold for the last 3 months. Asking prices, though, looking for a bit more, looking for 40 to 75, with someone looking for a high of 150. Will they get it? I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, for their sake. I'm just pointing it out. This is what's out there. This is what the market is seeking for this book, as well as what the market has recently paid for this book. So when you stumble across it, when you're flipping through a box, you know what you're looking at, and you have context to decide whether you want to buy it. Because that's the whole point of this. I'm not telling you to go buy this online. I'm not telling you to go spend $40 to $75 on a book like this. I'm saying just know the info. So in case you go through a box and you find a Max run that's only a couple of bucks, or maybe $5 for issue 34, $5 seems like it would be worth it based off of this pricing. But who knows? You make the call for yourself. But before we wrap up on the Max, I do have to tell you that there are 39 9.8s, which is a bigger number than I would have expected. It's been around a while. This book does go back to the 90s or thereabouts, so there's been a lot of time for them to get copies graded. It's just, I wouldn't have thought that many people would be grading issue 34 of Sam Keith's The Max. But here we are with 39. Which takes us to our final book. Now, our final book is another one that I covered on our first show of this rejuvenated series, and that is Akira. You know, Tetsuo. Issue 37 is the second to last. Issue 38 is the one everyone knows by now is the last issue to find. But issue 37, do not sleep on it, because it is still worth a good chunk of change. Maybe not hundreds, but recent sales, $65 to $100. This is good info to know. Asking prices on this one, well, it's looking for $85 to about $120. A very tighter range on what the asking prices are right now. With the high one actually looking for $240. And I just stuck with raw prices. Yes, there are some graded copies out there. Not many, because in the census, there are only 12. So we got a dozen 9.8s. Maybe you get the lucky baker's dozen number 13 if you find a nice clean copy and decide to sub it for grading. But with that, still a good book to know. Akira 37, over $100 potentially on this comic. So something worth knowing, something to keep in your back pocket in case you're flipping through a box and you look into some old epic books, and you're like, ooh, Akira. Because again, the entire run is not as valuable. So that's why I'm pointing out ones that do stand out from the pack. So with that all said, that is our last book for this issue of, or this episode of Next to Last to Know. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you found that helpful. I plan to do this every so often. After I cover some more final issues, I might come back and cover, again, some titles we might have talked about before, but give you those next to last issues, just for context. Because again, some of them do quite well, even though they're not the final ones, and maybe not do as well, but they're still worth knowing and worth grabbing if you come across them. So hopefully you're on board for that. Hopefully you're on board for everything we're covering here on the channel, because I got plenty more content coming your way in the weeks, months, and hopefully years ahead. So with all of that said, I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.